now we're gonna pivot a little bit. We're gonna move to
another
TV
bingeable show.
Another bingeable show that you binge watch all the time. In fact, I catch you several nights. You're passed out on the couch downstairs in front of episodes of this show.
Yes.
This is another show. I was actually wondering if you were going to pick this one or Supernatural. You picked this one, which is The Magicians.
The Magicians. Yeah. So there's like 2 shows that I binge watch the most right now. So if I don't know what else to watch and I just want to put something on that I'm going to enjoy and it's really entertaining, I'm not always ready for a new world because it's risky. I might like it, I might not like it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of seasons, like maybe I want to keep watching it, maybe I don't.
You got to have your comfort food shows for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. So, like in an earlier era, this would have been about, like Buffy or the X-Files or, 6 Feet Under. Those are some of the shows that like were my binging shows that I wanted to watch and I could watch them again and again back in the day. But, now I've seen those many times and some of them are not on convenient streaming services anymore either. So it's like the newer ones. So it's like Supernatural and The Magicians, which are quite different shows. So we're going to talk about The Magicians this time. Yeah. And, it was originally on the Syfy network, on Syfy, which is another thing I liked about it, that we were talking about a USA show and a Syfy show that we both really enjoy, because I feel like some of the smaller networks can take more risks and do things that are very innovative, because The Magicians has a lot of cussing and a lot of drug use and a lot of sex and a lot of kind of crazy things going on, and they could just go there. It's much more grown up and adult. It's not a good show to watch with kids that you don't want seeing a lot of cussing, sex, and drug use, because it has that. So don't watch it with little ones. And don't even watch it with preteens and teens unless you're really comfortable with them seeing that kind of thing. But it's basically... I grew up with The Hobbit, and my mom read The Hobbit to me when I was 5 and loved The Hobbit. And then, Lord of the Rings movies came out. So my mom didn't like Lord of the Rings, but I did. I read that too. And, it's like that, the magical world. And I loved The Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. And so it's like that, building worlds that have different rules, that have like beautiful magic in it. And Harry Potter came in. And so that was a thing, and it fed that itch. But I think mine is much more from The Hobbit, as like the beginning of me loving like fantasy and the magical worlds that are possible to think about, or perhaps, they're real. Perhaps they're in an alternate dimension, that there are rules where magic exists. We certainly like to think about it a lot, and we write about it a lot. As human beings, there's just so many different worlds that are built that have these kinds of operating principles. And I like these worlds. And so it's nice to see something new that adds to it. And there was a lot of emphasis on, because of the Harry Potter thing, really younger kids going into a magical world. And so then you sort of have like a gazillion shows on Netflix and the other streaming networks that were created. And they're all like kids at a boarding school that are, they're young and they're just going to go through puberty and go through discovering magic at the same time. So what I like about this one is that it's like graduate students who discover that they're magicians and go to graduate school for magic. So it's like the grown-up version, which is really, because it's like, and then there's cussing, and then there's the sex, and there's the drug use, and because it's the grown-up version. So it's like,
that's what it comes off to be. It comes off like very, very adult, like college age Harry Potter. Like it's
not college age. Grad school.
Grad school.
They've all finished college.
Same thing.
No, they're older.
I only went to community college.
Grad school is older. So it's like, people in their mid-20s discovering that they have these gifts and these talents, and they've gone through more stuff before it comes into their life. So it intersects with their lives as adults. Yeah. And it's just different than watching coming of age stories, because I like coming of age stories too. But this is just a unique take on it, because it is, every single thing about it is a much more adult sensibility. Yeah. It is based on a series of novels written by Lev Grossman. I did go and read the novels after watching the first couple seasons. There are 5 seasons of the show, I believe. And I don't watch the 5th season as much as I rewatch the other ones, because I know it's coming to a close, and I actually find that kind of painful. I don't want the world to end, and I don't want the storylines to get tied up. So I have trouble watching rewatching all the way to the end, which is true of Supernatural as well. I don't really like watching last season. I want to watch Beast just stay in the world because I'm enjoying it. And they do tell a good arc, so they do tell things that continue to unfold and to kind of conclude by the end of the series. So it's a good series in that way. There's only 5 seasons, so it's not overwhelming. Well, it's a little bit if people only want to watch one season of something. There's a little more. You could watch just the first and second seasons and stop. I mean, it does leave you with something new that's going to unfold and take it in a new direction, but it also kind of wraps up some storylines, especially between season 1, season 2. It wraps up all the big storylines that it introduces in the beginning. And some really difficult things happen to the characters. So it is pretty responsible storytelling at the end credits. Whenever they've dealt with something that might have been a little bit triggering for an audience member, they actually have hotlines and resources for people to call. Because
there are a couple episodes of Mr. Robot that do that too.
Yeah, because there are episodes that deal with mental health. There are episodes that deal with rape. And they show some pretty violent scenes having to do with drug use, and the magicians are dealing with multiple realities, and some of it is going to impede upon mental health. And some of the characters, more than one of the characters, have some struggles in that regard as well. And then the issue with rape is a very, very real issue in our world, but it's quite gruesome and real how they film the scene. The major scene about that, just one major story arc that unfolds up because of that incident. So it can be very upsetting, but I really respect that there's hotlines on there for people that if you have experienced sexual assault, resources of where to reach out. If you are struggling with mental health, where to reach out. For suicide prevention hotlines and that sort of thing. So I think that's really important. It's not just throwing a bunch of really difficult things in the midst of this sort of fantastical storytelling. There's some real stuff that's coming up, and I think that's what I enjoy about it. And the books are quite different. There's a lot of the same world building, and the characters mostly have the same names. And it's really funny because one of the characters does not have the same name. In the books, she's Janet, and in the shows, she's Margot. And when they first show up in the library, which the library is the repository of all knowledge and is held by master magicians, and they become major characters in the show throughout the many seasons. When they first all show up in the library, the head librarian goes, "Oh, there you are, Quentin, Alice, Penny, Elliot, and Janet." And she goes, "Margot," and then she looks at her and goes, "This time." And it's so cute because it's like it's just this little moment. Like if you read the book, you're like, why the fuck is her name
Tip of the hat.
Margot?
Tip of the hat.
Yeah, it's very subtle, but it's very cute. This time, your name's Margot. Because in the original stories, it was Janet. And I love the casting that they did. So some of the casting is a little different from how the characters were described in the books. I feel like Elliot and Penny are quite a bit different in their characterizations in the books. And I love the actors that play those characters in the show. And I think they do a fantastic job. And so what I've said a little bit about what I like about the show. What was your feeling as you watched most or all of it with me?
It's been a while since I've watched like the bulk of it with you.
He hasn't re-binged it, unlike me.
I remember, a lot of like complex storytelling. I remember the first season they're like trying to stop this very powerful, like the beast. A
very, very bad dark wizard, sort of Voldemort.
Dark force, but then when they do stop him, like that just complicates things more. It's very similar to Mr. Robot in that sense. You slay one.
It has unintended consequences.
You slay one dragon, and then you got to deal with the fallout of that. Yeah,
actually, that is a thing that unfolds throughout the show as well. I hadn't really thought it's another parallel. It's not the only moment where something that they think is going to be like deliver them into something better actually has all these unintended consequences, and then there's like all this fallout that has to be dealt with after that, which is pretty real world, actually.
I think there's a lot of that. I remember like there's a lot of good character dynamics in there, and there's definitely some characters. There's a big cast. Like you think like certain characters are like your main character, but then like no, this is a very ensemble piece. I like that. There's definitely characters who I like, and there's definitely some characters that got on my nerves. I think everybody is good in it. Everybody's well cast, but there's like certain people like like Quentin pisses me off. I'm sorry.
And Quentin's kind of the central protagonist. He is the lead character you meet first.
Yeah, he's a bit like
he's a bit whiny,
just overly whiny and emo for me. Like, I want to go to my fillery, but and also like what's her face? The blonde glasses, Alice. Yeah, Alice. I hate Alice.
And they're like the lead couple.
They're like the lead couple, but
everybody else is brilliant.
But I love Elliot.
And Elliott's
probably my favorite, and I love Margot. And Margot's great. Margot ain't taking no shit. I love Margot.
Yeah, Elliot and Margot are amazing. Well, there's in one of the further seasons, there's this episode called 6 Short Stories, and it tells you 6 stories that are unfolding through 6 different smaller characters. And the person, someone's reading these stories. So our lives are written into books. And so the record of each of us is kept as a tale, as a book that goes into the library. So the library is the repository of all knowledge, not just, science and philosophy textbooks, but the stories of our lives. So it's the place that keeps the history and the memory of everyone. And so someone's reading these 6 short stories, and someone else has told them to read the stories. And they're supposed to recognize by the end of this tale, but you as the audience member get to now see each of these 6 short stories. The reader character in the show is supposed to realize that it's not always about the main characters. Really important things are happening that really matter to everybody and also are very big for the individuals experiencing them all around what seem like the central figures in this story. And that's what the actor, the character in the show who's reading these 6 is supposed to recognize that. But you as an audience member get to recognize that also. And it's very, very, very smart storytelling. So there's some episodes that are a little more meta and kind of commenting on themselves. They are playing with some, alternate timelines and what's happening in the universe and that sort of thing a little bit. But I love that they develop arcs for so many of the characters. Even like the head librarian, she could just be this figure representing that entity, but she has an incredibly interesting arc throughout the show. So there's development for everybody, and that's part of what makes it really valuable as someone who loves fiction and I love good storytelling. Is I'm interested in like things that happen for all of the characters, and like the dean of the school where they go to grad school to become magicians, like the dean's arc and like his story and what's happening with him. It's all pretty amazing. I love it.
Like, and everybody has an arc, right?
Yeah. Everybody has a journey that's unfolding with there's not that many small throwaway characters that come in for a while and then you don't see them again. There's just basically like Todd. So it's like, just don't be the Todd. Like, have a real arc. Most shows have tons of Todd, which is really funny if you have seen the show, that I'm sort of calling them out on what they did with Todd, which is they didn't give him a full arc. But then you have, other characters that come in not until the 2nd season, but are there to the very end and have very important arcs as well. So it's a very ensemble cast, and what is the ensemble keeps developing. It's not fixed. Even like Firefly, which is another one of my favorite shows, which is very, very good storytelling and has a wonderful ensemble cast, and is one of those things that got tragically cut short. So there's not enough of it. Even with Firefly, it is that set cast. Perhaps if they had many more seasons, they would have had, someone that's leaving or someone that's dying or someone else that's joining or whatever. Even with Buffy, of course, all of a sudden, season 6, Dawn, where'd that sister come from? Maybe there would have been some of that. It is Joss Whedon storytelling, so likely he would have killed off someone you really love, like Serenity, the movie. Joss likes to do that sometimes. But it's, the Magicians, I think, keeps evolving it beyond the classic ensemble cast. It's even more fluid and it's more dynamic than just that first ensemble.
Yeah, it's interesting when they bring the whole like fillery. Fillery is kind of this very magical, like alternate world that is written about in these children's books that Quentin kind of grew up with. And when they bring that world into the fold, and some of the characters become like royalty in the fillery world and the
so
whole
in the world
there.
of the Magicians, these characters grew up reading a book about children who go through a portal and get to a magical world. It's very much Narnia.
Yeah.
And it's Fillory. And yet what happens is they realize Fillory is a world, and the children that were written about do exist and did go to Fillory. And then some of them also get to travel to Fillory. So then there's a second world where things are happening. So things are happening on Earth, and things are happening in Fillory and in the library, which kind of exists outside of time and space. And then there's a place in between that's not Fillory and not any of the other worlds. It's called the Neitherlands, because it's neither here nor there. It's kind of brilliant. So you have to pass through the Neitherlands to get into a portal to go to another world.
Nice.
And so the Neitherlands is full of fountains, and you jump into the fountain, and that's the portal to get to each of the worlds. So you have to know which fountain to jump into if you find yourself in the Neitherlands. Otherwise, you might get stuck neither here nor there forever. And so that's a really interesting thing there. And where do all those other fountains go? We only learn about basically sort of three, 2 worlds and 1 not world pocket universe sort of thing, which is like Earth, Fillory, and the library. But there's like way more storytelling that could happen, because that the Netherlands is full of fountains, guys.
Yeah.
There's a lot of worlds out there.
Yeah. So I guess there's one great thing about magicians I kind of want to mention, but I hesitate to mention because it would involve going into spoiler territory. But before we do, like, what do you think, if you had to encapsulate for somebody, what makes this show so like endlessly like rewatchable and bingeable for you to the point where you binge watch it on the couch late at night so much? What is it that keeps you coming back with all the other things out there? Because I think that's an accomplishment, honestly, with both of these shows we're talking about tonight, especially in our world where there's so much goddamn content all the time.
Yeah, why are we in love with
to have
Mr. Robot
anything
and the
that
Magicians?
you keep coming back to over and over again? I think that's an accomplishment, frankly, because like there's so much content, you watch it and you throw it away and you don't ever think about it again. So.
Oh, and occasionally there's episodes where they get to sing a bit, and I must say,
there you go.
They're good singers. They're really good singers. Elliot and Katie, those actors in particular, are kind of amazing, and they find moments for them to both get to really shine as vocalists, which as a singer makes me really happy. And the show has a really great soundtrack. I love there's so many. I'm just like watching the show and I'm just waiting for the music cue to drop. Like I know exactly where the music cues are going to be, and I know what song it's going to be. If I think about a scene, a song will play in my mind that plays with that scene, because the song choices are very specific and they're very complimentary. And because it's set now in our world, it can use current music and it doesn't have to apologize for it, because it's all just sort of now-ish, 2016. So it's sort of like Mr. Robot, I think.
Yeah,
the first season.
Around the same time. Yeah,
because the kids are, these are grad students. They're invited to their first year of a 3-year graduate program, and they're entering in 2016. So that's where it's starting. And it went through 2020 or 2021 or something. So, why is it so endlessly bingeable?
Yeah.
It's hard to know why there's a certain tone that just appeals to you and you don't mind going back to it, because at some point we're going to talk about Outlander, which is an entirely different genre, and yet it's a series that I read and reread. So when I don't know what to read or reread, there's like 2 series I've been rereading a lot, and one is the Dresden Files. Which I love the Dresden Files, and and that's also a magical world set like today in Chicago, and it's sort of like urban fantasy around a wizard solving crimes and protecting people, and then there's like Outlander, which is like time travel fantasy in Scotland and America in the 1700s, with little reflections of the 20th century as the time travel characters happen going back and forth. And like, why these things? I don't know, because I used to reread Dune a lot, and we are going to talk about Dune later this year, guys.
Yeah,
we're talking about Dune.
Fingers crossed.
We can still talk about it. Even if we don't have the second movie, I think we should talk about the original Dune movie, the book, and then the new Dune movie. Because just those 3 things, I could talk an entire episode
We'll definitely talk about it at a podcast at some point. Like
we'll figure out the timing. But we will talk about Outlander at some point, and we will talk about Dune at some point. Because those are things that I've also been very immersed in for a very long time. So they have an influence on my personality and my sensibility and how I see reality, how I see the world. And I reread The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings so much. And then the Harry Potter books, I reread them many, many times. And so there's just something a little bit comfortable, but a little bit fresh about the magicians. That's a little bit like the book series that I've reread the most, that the show is. And when I just don't know what world I want to be part of, I can just always go join this one, and it's usually fine. And the few very disturbing parts that I don't like, I just fast forward through those now. And I've already seen them. I know the really dark, disturbing things that happen, and I there's only a couple. I just don't watch them anymore. But I like watching the rest of the show. And I think it's just because I love the tone, I love the quippiness, I love the banter, I love how smart it is, I love that it's very real and that they cuss, and some of them are more straight edge, and some of them are very drug friendly, and people in my world are like that. So we're very straight edge, and I know a lot of people that don't partake at all, and then I know some people that are more recreational about things. And that feels real. The cussing that they do feels very real. It feels more like diversity of the my friend group. If somebody told all of us we were magicians, we'd be like, well, of course we are. And then we would be a lot like these kids, and things would go horribly, awfully wrong because we're all a little bit of a mess, and we're all just figuring our way. So, it kind of feels more like me, oh yeah, they could just invite me and I'd be a cast member. So totally, I'd be hanging with all of them.
The diversity and the complexity of the relationships with the characters, and also the diversity of the cast and the diversity of the sexualities of the characters too.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't feel, it feels real without feeling like, box ticking of like, oh, we gotta have a black person, gotta have a gay person. It doesn't feel like they're just shoving them in just to shove them in. It feels organic. It feels
more real. Like it's diverse because reality. People are diverse.
Yeah, exactly.
Not diverse because they were like, let's make sure to tick every box.
Exactly. Yeah.
But just because they were, and the original author of the book series, Lev Grossman, he is a consulting producer on the show. He's not a main producer on the show. So I always like that when the authors who built the world are still involved, and the show has not gone off the rails so much that the author's disgusted and wants nothing to do with it. It's generally a good sign if the author continues to be involved in the world that they've created. So that is a nice thing that's there. But yeah, I guess it just feels like close enough to relate to that feels like, my own friend group is sort of these characters on the show. And also at the same time, they get magic, which we don't have, but wouldn't that be awesome? So there's just a little bit of wish fulfillment maybe about watching all of it. And I like... we love Doctor Who, and so there's like when you have these multiple realities that they are in Earth and they get to go to Fillory, and there's the library, the Netherlands, and there's other stuff going on. It's just more layered and more interesting than just Earth or just fantasy. Because, some things are just fantasy and you're out there in this other world. Like, dude, you're just going to be in the Dune world. You're not going to be back on Earth and be like dealing with going back and forth. But this is more complicated because you actually have both. In the same way Doctor Who has episodes on Earth and episodes other places. So, there's just something that's more... that keeps your attention for longer when it's complicated like that. And, sometimes I know that I want to put something on that I can take a nap to. Yeah. And I can't do it if I haven't seen it yet. Sure. Because I have this brain that won't shut off. And I'm like, I might miss something. Yeah. So like the only things I can really nap very comfortably to now are The Magicians and Supernatural, because I've seen them all so much that I know exactly what's going to happen in every episode. So if I fall asleep, I don't actually miss. I can wake back up and I'm right back in the world. I actually know everything I missed from where I last remember to where I wake back up. It doesn't matter. So it's nice sometimes if you just need to like take a nap and have background noise. And like just going and laying in your bed, your brain might get too active and you couldn't actually take a nap. So like for me, I have to find like that right magic combo of things in order to be able to rest. Not sleeping at night, but like take a rest some other time. Like there's just certain conditions when I can actually do that. So it's kind of like a sleep maintenance plan for me of like, what can I have on that my brain will not be like, but I can't miss anything. And just watching something for the second time is generally not enough. My brain's still like, I can't miss anything. Like I would not nap right now. We are watching Mr. Robot, and it's only the second time for me to watch it. And now I know the things that unfolded later, so I'm able to watch it afresh in a show as smartly written as Mr. Robot. Like, I definitely don't want to miss anything. So I'm not going to watch that when I'm, like, sleepy, because I don't want to fall asleep.
No.
So, yes, it's no disrespect to The Magicians that they're the main show I nap to. It's only because I know
because you know it so much. No,
well,
yeah, exactly.
And I know everything that I miss.
It's the comfort food security blanket type show. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I got to give it kudos for this. And I'll be vague with this spoiler, but if you don't want to know absolutely anything, I'll give you a time code, guys, to skip to. watch the show first, or if you already watched the show or you don't care, then don't skip. But there's the time code to go to if you want to skip to on YouTube and Spotify. So I got to give it kudos for it killing off one of the major characters in like its penultimate, its second to final season, and that character, and it's not a Marvel thing. That character does not come back like at all. They're
really gone.
They dead and they stay dead, and like I got to give it kudos for that because I can't think of many other things off the top of my head
where the
that
lead
have done that.
Protagonist is done.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, because it's like Ned Stark,
Exactly.
And he only got part of the first book / first season, and so he's like a false start first character, a false start lead, and this is not with the Magicians. It's not, and they make 2 Ned Stark references in the show. One where they use his name, and an earlier reference where they just said, "What if we're one of those shows that just kills off its leads in the midst of the first season?" And they're alluding to it without saying it. But then later they actually say it because they're talking about.
So this side of Game of Thrones, kudos for that character death that doesn't come back. But
yeah.
I can't make Game of Thrones references because I haven't watched it, and I still don't want to watch it. That's just me.
Yeah. And I have read the series multiple times before the shows ever came out. So I've seen most of the show because I'd read the book series several times and really loved the books. So I make more references to it because it's just another of the worlds I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so that like Quentin has struggled with being alive or not being alive. He's been someone who's sort of longed to not exist a lot in his life, which is very relatable. There are people that I love in my life very much that have had that struggle of thinking the world would be better off without me. And I don't know why I'm here. Like, what's the use of me? Why should I keep existing when it's painful and it's hard and it's, so what? And you meet him there. He's actually in a mental health facility in the very first episode of the first show. You meet Quentin in the midst of his struggle, that it's really hard for him. He doesn't feel like he has a place in the world. And hey, Unheard Sirens, Renegades alert, he discovers he has magic and finally realizes there are other aliens like him, and he does have a place in the world. Yeah. He's always been on medication. He's always struggled. He's had several hospitalizations in his past. This is very much clear in the book series as well as the show. He's been on medication in order to manage his depression and his suicidal tendencies and his social anxiety. And when he goes to Break Bells, which is the grad school for magic that they get invited to, he stops taking his prescription. He doesn't need those medications anymore because the feeling of being a completely abandoned, stranded, lost, confused outsider dissipates because he's still a weirdo and he's still a freak and he still struggles with depression. It's really hard for Quentin to stay happy and satisfied with life. Like, that is a difficult position for him to hold in the world. Even after he discovers magic, even after he falls in love and has a relationship, like, he still struggles with that. But maybe part of the reason that Quentin doesn't get on my nerves the way he does with you is because, like, I have had a number of people that I love in this world that are a lot like that have really had that kind of struggle. And when you are really dealing with depression, you get to a happier place and new things come in that relieve some of it, but you can slide back in and then find yourself back in depression again. And so Quentin really struggles with that. And what's amazing is that there's this really, really brilliant arc of like what happens and why he dies. And and he's really putting himself on the line to save people and to save the world. And yet the first thing when he gets to the afterlife, you get a little bit of him before he heads off to whatever's after the first check-in point in the afterlife. You go to the underworld and you have a little check-in moment. So you get that scene, and then he's going to go to the subway station and he goes to whatever's next. And then that's just left vague, and he doesn't come back. Like Remy was saying, he is gone. They don't just revive the character and go to the underworld, rescue him, bring him back. Like that's a trope that gets done in a lot of series. Like, we can't really let go of them, so then there's this journey to get them back. But with Quentin, like, you have that scene where he is in the afterlife and they're like, no, you've died, you're gone. And he says, did I do this to save everyone, or did I finally figure out how to commit suicide? Like, he's not, at first he's like, wait, did I just want to die? Is that why I did this? Because I was always struggling with being alive versus not. And I think that is such a poignant, beautiful moment. And the person that he is talking with, I guess you've already seen the show to this point, hopefully. I don't want to give away too many spoilers. I just feel like it's such a disservice.
We're way past that point.
I know, because we're talking about Quentin in the afterlife. Yeah. But so he's talking with Penny, and Penny's like, dude, let's go to your friends right now in the world. So as spirits, they can kind of visit them. And they see the rest of the gang sitting around the fire, like talking about what Quentin meant to them, and throwing things that they loved from him into the fire to kind of release and let him go. And he sees that no, he really did love them, and he was loved in return, and he really did try to save them. He wasn't just conveniently able to do suicide in an altruistic, I also helped other people while just getting to kill myself way. But I think it is such a mature like situation. Like that's a complicated kind of thing that the show is dealing with, and that he's like, wait, did I mean to do that? Did I mean to die? Yeah. And in the end, in this story, he didn't. He was not just trying to end his own life. He really was there for the others, and what happened took his life, and then he can make peace with that, and then that's when he's free from that sort of the bardo, the kind of intervening place you arrive just after death, which is not your final destination, but it's like a holding area that exists in many, many world traditions. So something like a bardo is where he is. And then he gets on the subway because he grew up in New York, so it's a subway. He's got a subway token now, and he's passing on. And I think that is such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And yeah, the show has seemed to center a bit around Quentin. He's the protagonist. Yeah. He's the Harry Potter guy. He's like the white male dude you're going to follow into the world, like we do with so many stories. But they mock that in that episode I mentioned, the 6 short stories. None of that is about Quentin. It's about these other stories. And they're all supposed to realize, like, this is, all of them are important. All of them have lives that matter. And the show really means it. Yeah. It means it so much that it has 2 more seasons without Quentin. And you see what happens when someone that is loved in a friend group, which they are not always friends. Sometimes they get on each other's nerves a lot too, but they are a tight group, even though they're not all friends.
That's one thing.
See what happens.
That's one thing I'll mention is like even though like Quentin gets on my nerves, I'm glad they have like Penny in there as well, who's like my spirit animal. When Quentin's getting on my nerves, it's like, shut up, bitch. Like.
You're like, thank God somebody said something.
Somebody is saying it. Yeah.
Katie will always say something. And if it's necessary, Katie will knock you out. And I love that Katie's always like, you know what? Boom. It's like the chick who's just like, I'm done dealing with this. She punches so many people. She is so tough. And I'm like, yeah, I think Katie's my character. Because sometimes it's like, well, if we were going to do the magicians for Halloween, I think we'd have to be Penny and Katie.
I'm not Indian enough to be Penny.
No, you can't do it heavy. But he's not Indian in the books. So the original Penny wasn't. The original Penny was emo. You'd rather be Elliot. I don't think I'm very Margot, but I could play Margot.
You could pull off Margot.
I could play Margot, but I'm not a Margot. I'm a little more like Katie.
Fair enough.
Than the others. But I don't punch as many people as Katie. Katie is like...
Yeah.
Katie's the like much more pissed off, sort of, self-assured. But it's like she does it for a good reason. Yeah. It's generally deserved. If Katie punches you, you had it coming. It's kind of like when Penny says something like quippy and insulting. It's like, yeah, it came from somewhere. You're not wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway.
That's the Magicians.
That's the Magicians, guys, and those are our bingeable TV shows, guys. What are your like bingeable and re-bingeable shows? What are the ones that you keep going back to over and over again? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, please let us know, because we'll go watch them.
We'll check them out. Yeah,
we're always looking for new worlds to fall into.
And of course, any other topics you want us to talk about, thoughts on any of this.